Okay, maybe we are live. Hopefully we are live. All right, everyone. I guess of course, there's going to be a delay here on the YouTube stream. So we're going to wait here till we catch up. Oh, there's my face. That's much better. Okay, I'm going to pause the stream here. Actually, I'm going to try and make sure that I can hear myself before we hop in here. Okay. So the sound is coming out nicely. Let's go ahead and dock our phone here. Very low budget sort of production happening here. So, all right, everyone, hello, welcome to the live stream. Looks like we don't really have anybody hanging out just yet, which is fine. Hopefully people will be coming in to join us as the stream goes on. Before we do get into the topic, of course, this is meant to be One Cuppa Live, so we should start it out that way. Welcome to One Cuppa Japan Live. This is a show where we have a conversation over something good that soothes you. Unfortunately, we're having something very boring today. This is just water, but it's in a Harry Potter butterbeer glass, so I suppose we can pretend that it's something a lot more interesting than it is. So, I hope everyone is doing well today. I'm having a bit of a busy morning, doing some private lessons and that kind of thing. I'm gonna have to hop away from the camera for just 1 minute at some point here because my partner is coming to get something from our place. But other than that, we should have a very smooth stream. For everyone that's here right now, welcome, thank you for coming. Could you tell me how the video and the sound are for you in the comments? Just to make sure that we're doing okay. Of course, as the title of the stream points out, we're going to be talking about Terrace House today, and we're going to be talking about dating culture in Japan and all that kind of thing, and I'm hoping to go for just about an hour. I'm not going to chat more than this message, so I don't really share the conversation. Okay, thank you, Hickey. You can feel free to steer it to J-pop. Of course, I suppose probably towards the end of the stream, as is the case, we'll kind of the topic of the stream will sort of peter out and we'll have some time to just talk about whatever, so please feel free to talk about whatever you'd like. Andrew Johnson, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. I enjoyed playing Unturned with you. I didn't enjoy the game, but I enjoyed playing with you. That was fun. So to talk about Terrace House, right, I think Wikipedia, you watch Terrace House, but Andrew, do you watch Terrace House? Hey, Kyushu Trail, how you doing? Thank you for subbing to the channel and to following me on Twitter too. It's nice to see you. I'm interested in checking out your videos as somebody who's done a bit of hiking around Japan. Yeah, Kyushu is not a place that I've been. It's a place I'd like to go, so I'm interested to see kind of like what kind of stuff you get up to down there. You're thinking about watching it, Andrew. Yeah, like I think the interesting thing about Terrace House is that it's kind of like, I'm just realizing that, like, I did a very bad job at cleaning off you can see over here, there's my hoodie sitting on the couch. I'm a little bit embarrassed. I guess you can't see the table, which has models and stuff on it. I'm not used to this angle, so I guess you're gonna see more than I'd like you to, possibly. Hey Travis, how's it going? So the Terrace House, right, like the interesting thing about Terrace House and the reason I started watching it was in the hope that it would give me some sort of insight into like interpersonal relationships between Japanese people. And of course, at the end of the day, the more and more like you're here and like you watch and you observe, you realize that things aren't really all that different between Japanese people than they are with any other people because they're people. But the way in which things are carried out and that kind of thing. Excuse me, just one moment. Just give me just one moment. I'll be right back. Yahoo! 生配信中です。タイミングめっちゃいいじゃん。あ、でもいいかよ、みんなでなんか、行くっつって。聞こえてたな。わかんない。いや、まあちょっと恥ずかしい、無理。気をつけてな。ありがとう。お母さんによろしく。恥ずかしい。バイバイ。バイバイ。Alright everyone, we're back. Sorry about that. Here's a question. How much of that conversation could you hear? Because that was my partner who was sort of mortified by the idea of being shown here on stream. So, but anyhow, getting back to Terrace House, of course, the thing about it is it's advertised as this thing that's not scripted, that it's supposed to be 100% authentic and all that kind of jazz. Oh, good. All of it was with an earshot, eh? I see. Well, that's good. Well, there was no sensitive information in that conversation. Hello, Salty P. Long time no see, man. Welcome back. It's good to see you. And like, I don't know how much of that is true, right? As far as Terrace House being unscripted, but there are like some good things that you can learn from it. Of course, there's like some like vocabulary that you won't find in a textbook that you can find in that show, which is the basis of Teraha Nihongo, which is a series we're doing on this channel now to like use the words or phrases that you hear in Terrace House to kind of teach you some Japanese or more natural ways of using Japanese, that kind of thing. So it's very useful for that. And it also proves as like this really interesting study into this idea of like reading the air, right? Kookie o yomu kind of thing. So it's been kind of instructive for me in how to deal with people. And it's really, really interesting to talk about it with my partner, who of course, we have these different cultural lenses. So for me to see something and be like, oh, that's really fucked up. And for her to be like, well, it's kind of the norm kind of thing. So that's a little bit what I want to talk about today. Your Japanese is so good. If only that were true. I want to start watching it. Should I start from season 1 or the latest season? I think maybe the most interesting seasons, and for some reason, this is just me thinking this without any reason for it. I have a sense that maybe the older seasons, like, what is it called? Like Tokyo, like Boys X Girls Next Door was the name of that original series. And it seems to be a little bit more authentic. It seems to be, the production that's put into that show is a lot less. And so it seems to be like you're focused on the people a little bit more, and it seems like it's more of like a natural thing that's happening. So as far as like using it as like a case study in like how people are going to interact with each other, I think maybe the older seasons are better. However, the newer seasons, again, because probably there is some kind of behind the scenes tinkering going on with the storylines, are much more entertaining, I think. There's a lot more drama. So if you're into that kind of thing, which I didn't think I was, I thought I was above it, but that's what I get, I suppose. But I just mentioned this idea of how, of course, because of these different cultural lenses, like some of the things that happen in the show, they become like these interesting conversation pieces, right? And they become like this a really interesting chance to see like how my experience growing up in the States and my partner's experience growing up in Japan sort of shapes our view of these things that happen between these people, or the things that these people do to each other. Yeah, the drama really does suck you in, Kyushu Trail. Yeah, thank you, Salty P. I'm really, really glad to be back. It's been fun. It's been really good, like, to, especially recently because of putting out content a lot faster clip. It's really good for like my confidence again. Love me. So I want to talk about one thing in particular, and that is this kind of maybe a spoiler, I guess, but I don't know. Are there spoilers in shows of this nature? I don't know, but what's happening now on this series is that there are two members of this house. I think the names escape me. I only remember the nickname of the man involved in the situation. I think his name is Nishino Nantoka, Nishino something or other. But they call him Nini on the show. The commentating cast calls him Nini. And he is a company owner in Tokyo, so he's got a little bit of money and he likes to throw his money around and he thinks he's cool, but he seems like a person who has no sort of understanding of what it means to actually have a relationship with a person other than to treat them like a piece of bangable meat, right? And so that's this one character. And then there's this other character, I don't want to say character, but person named Yume. She's from Hokkaido, and she's like a gravium model, right? Basically, gravium models are like, basically, they're the last step before like nude photography, I think. They're not, it's not like pornographic, it's like, you know, just like bikini models, that kind of thing. Sounds like a bit of a Nini. He does, yes, Nini sounds like a Nini for sure. So that's kind of the setup here. And so you have this guy who has no real sense of boundary and no understanding of when he's making people uncomfortable and when he's doing things that are kind of unacceptable. And then on the other hand, you have Yume, who's like, how to put it? She is not, she's sort of like, I'm trying to think about how to put this in the way that I mean it without being terribly offensive, but like, she is very much like encouraging his advances in her actions. So you have like this mixture, right? I want to be very clear in what I just said. Like, so for an example, they go out like on a date together, and he does this really creepy thing where like he gets her a present, which is lip gloss, and he's like, oh well, you know, if you like it, if you're happy that I got it for you, I'm gonna put it on you for you, right? So he gives like this big like smear of it on her lips, and you know, purposely overdoes it, and she makes some comment about how he puts too much on her face, and so he's like, well, I guess I'll take some, and then he goes in for a kiss, right? And her response to the kiss is kind of like lukewarm at best, right? And I would hope that at this point, you know, they go home, and what I expect to happen is for her to be completely repulsed by this, because this guy is just like, he's not, you know, in a country where people are known for having like this almost like telepathic ability to understand when they're doing stupid shit to each other. He just has no idea, and you would expect, or the expected reaction by everybody sort of on this show, myself included, was for her to be just like revolted, repulsed, you know. But it was not the case. It was not the case. And so anyway, what ends up happening is they go out on a couple more dates, and well, not to spoil it completely, he eventually confesses to her, and I'll leave it to you to watch it to see whether or not she becomes his girlfriend or she rejects him or whatever. But anyway, there's a lot of these sort of instances where like the guy's super like date rapey, basically. He pushes things too far. He doesn't know the limits. He's very clearly trying to get her drunk, like super drunk, so he can take advantage of her. Maybe that's not the way he sees it, but that's how it seems to me as an observer. And where this sort of bleeds over into this idea of observed dating culture was really what I want to talk more about here on the live stream. Is right, to me, this person, this Nini, encompasses like the stereotypical Japanese male to me. And I've made this comment to my fiance too, and where it's sort of like, if a woman rejects you, the only answer to that is to sort of keep on pushing until, well, basically, right, the idea is that that women like to be chased, and that if you keep pushing, eventually that's going to force some kind of like interest in you, right? That's the idea. But what may actually end up happening is maybe the person feels threatened, and you know, they feel like you're not going to let up, so they give in to your advances. That's a much more accurate interpretation to me. Not being a woman, that's just my thought. Yeah. So I'd made comments like this before, and my partner had basically said, okay, well, yeah, I completely agree. This is like exactly why like so many people like sort of idolize like foreign men, because they have this idea, rightly founded or not, that foreign men do not do these things to women. Of course, we know that not to be true, right? There are things that people from the States do that are that Japanese men don't do that are bad things, right? Certainly. But I don't know how many of you in the comments out there, like, I think everybody in the comments has been here at least once, right? So what are your thoughts, I guess, on like Japanese dating culture, or even if it's just like an image? Do you have any experience dating with Japanese people? I guess in this situation, maybe it's just Emily. I don't know about everybody's orientation in the comments, of course, but especially if you have any experience dating Japanese men, I would be interested to hear about it. To see if your observations are similar to mine, or if they're completely different to mine, or whatever the case may be. So, but part of this observed dating culture thing, right, is it sort of bleeds into the drinking culture, and it's something we're going to be talking about in the deep roast episode of One Cuppa next week. But there's very much like, I don't know, in the States, I don't know how long it's been a thing, but like if you get drunk and you do stupid shit, people are still going to blame you for it, right? Because there's this idea that alcohol brings out your true character, right? So if you're really an asshole and you get drunk and you act like an asshole, well, guess what? That's just the alcohol sort of bringing out your true colors, is the idea, right? Oh, Kyushu Trail, met and married my wife in Australia, so I didn't get to experience dating in Japan. Sure. Yeah, I see. That's cool. Congratulations. I don't know how long you've been married. I don't know if it's weird to say congratulations at this point if it's been too long, but congratulations anyhow. But as for like the drinking thing and how this connects to the dating culture, like what will happen is that, and I've had this happen to me before, where I have, especially when the first couple times where I went out drinking, and I was just having such a good time that I had no sense of my limits. Travis and Emily Wikipedia here, you may be able to speak to this with some firsthand knowledge, but maybe no real sense of limit when it came to drinking. And that has led to me doing stupid things, of course, naturally. I remember one time, like, I was at my favorite Izakaya, which I've talked about a lot on this channel, my favorite pub, and like I was just being an asshole, like complete. From what I understand, I don't remember. Not the whole time, but towards the end, I was just like, I guess I was just like singing to myself in a really loud voice, and they kept asking me to like simmer down a little bit, and I would relax, and I'd start singing again, and I guess, and the master was like, okay, you gotta relax a little bit. I was like, why don't you shut up? Or this is what I'm told happened. And eventually he asked me to go home. And of course, when I found out about this, I was mortified. And I made the apologies. But what my apologies were met with was not like this, like, was not any sort of lessening of people's view of me, which I found to be very strange, to be honest. I'm grateful for that, but I find it to be strange that my relationship with these people has only gotten better since that point. But what it was met with was, oh, you were drunk. Like, it's cool, we get it, You can't help what happens when you're drunk, that kind of thing. And so when you connect that to like the dating thing, right? Obviously you could see how that might be quite dangerous, as far as things like consent and all that kind of thing. So let's continue this in a second, but let's hop into the comments here. The Western men thing is interesting, as there are certainly a contingent of Western guys who are very high on the creepy scale, though it seems to stem from social ineptitude coupled with ego getting. Right, well, that's what you just described, I think, is exactly what's happening with this guy we're talking about from Terrace House, where like he's socially inept. And from what I can tell from his like interactions with the people and the way he interacts with, like, there's a scene where he goes out on a date with a previously mentioned Yume, and he's like, oh, this place isn't ordinarily open, but I host the restaurant to open up early for me. So this is a guy who seems very clearly accustomed to using his affluence to sort of impress women, as opposed to anything of actual substance, right? Out of control due to suddenly being a bit more popular. Yeah, that's the thing, right? That happens a lot here, where people with this particular complexion, in my view, tend to come here and suddenly maybe they weren't very popular back home, and they have a little bit of like they run into like a pack of wild Gaijin hunters, and it just goes right to their head, and it just enables like this super creepy, like predatory behavior kind of thing. You're a pretty civilized drunk in my experience. Glad to hear it. You're generally fine when drunk, though we have ended up in some funny situations. Okay, well, that's good to hear. This is very good to hear. As for the funny situations Travis describes, most of them, I think he's talking about, ended up with us in snack bars, which is not a place where I soberly ever think like, okay, I want to go to a snack bar, but there you go. There you go. So, yeah, it's just like, you hear these stories where like women will be like, well, I didn't really want to sleep with him, but like we just kept drinking and he just kept buying me drinks, and then this happened. And I hear that and I'm just like, holy red flag, Batman, right? Like, you know, right? Like, where's the cancel culture kind of situation? So, you know, and it's not, in this situation in particular, it's not as though there's nothing there's nothing being reciprocated, right? But I think it there's like we have to be very careful when we say that, like a lot of times what happens, right, when people are cornered, right, is that they will just kind of go along with the situation as much as possible, because they don't want to be hurt, they don't want to be killed, or they don't want to be any of those things, right? They don't want to be put in a situation where something bad is going to happen to them. So, you know, so even if it is true that like this character is sort of like giving into his advances, so to speak, like you know, I think we have to look at it through the lens of like, okay, well, this is basically a cornered animal. And I don't mean because she's a woman, I mean because she's literally a cornered animal in the biological sense. You know, so yeah, fun times. But I would like to, I'm gonna ask this question again because there are more people still in the comments who haven't really chimed in. But even if you don't have any experience dating over here, I would be interested to know like what your image is, I suppose, of like the dating scene here. Whether that means like what you think men are like, what you think women are like, what you think like the whole courting procedure is like. Courting procedure makes it sound so formal. Though I guess, really, aren't we all just less interesting looking birds of paradise doing our best to impress the people we like? That's right, you can put that on a t-shirt. It's gonna wait a moment here to hopefully have some responses roll in. Gokon, yeah. So, Gokon, let's go ahead and put this into the comments for the sake of anyone learning Japanese out there. None of you are here with me. Gokon is written like this. If it's written in hiragana, it looks in Romaji, it looks like this. And it's basically it's like a dating party. It's a dating party where people will go and, you know, to meet other singles kind of thing. On the other hand, like, so there's Gokon, and then of course there's arranged marriage is still a thing here, for sure. There's that happens as well. I've never been to. Is that true? Have I never been to one? I've never been to Gokon before, but like either like some of my students who I teach privately or like my friends, I ask them what they're doing this weekend. Oh, I'm going to Gokon, and it's like where people go to drink, and it's basically a mixer. It's basically a mixer, and it seems like some people find some interesting people at these events, where other people are just finding for just find like a one night stand, that kind of thing. Andrew says, I find people seem to be more shy. If you're drinking with them in the group, they will start to open up more. Yeah, for sure. I think like there's a little bit more of like that element of Dutch courage, so to speak. And of course, drinking is just such a part of the social culture. Like, yeah. Can only comment on dating ladies, of course. The one thing I found is I have to pay way more attention to pick up on the subtext of things. Subcontext of things. Which is subtext, yes, okay, of things. It seems really hard to pick up on interest. Yeah. So, like, well, the example we were talking about from Terrace House, right, was like where this guy has a hard time picking up on lack of interest, right? He does not care. He either doesn't know, or he doesn't notice, or he doesn't care that this woman he's pursuing just has maybe no genuine interest in him, right? But the thing Travis is talking about here is like the opposite situation, where it can be really difficult to tell when a woman has interest in you, right? And of course, I think sometimes this can be difficult to tell in your own culture, right? Just for many reasons, like maybe the person you're dating is just not very overt with their feelings. They're not very straight with the things they say, or whatever. Maybe there's only body language signs. Maybe there's not even that. But what happens here is I think because of the fact that maybe foreigners tend to be a little bit KY, right? Which is Kookie yomenai. So you'll hear this a lot, right? Like kiki yomenai. Kiki, huh? My mouth is not working. Kookie yomenai. Right? Kookie yomenai. Right? Where we don't have like that sort of learned ability to sort of read the situation because we're outside of the homogeny of Japanese culture, kind of thing. And so your inability to read the air can make it difficult for you to find a relationship, because I don't know if this is the case for Travis or anybody else who's dated a Japanese man or a woman, but so much of the context is, or the clues that you would ordinarily expect, are sort of unspoken. They're just sort of like if I weren't interested in you, then I wouldn't be going out with you. Like, why do I need to tell you that I like you, or that kind of thing, which is strange a little bit, because one of the things my partner still comments on is the fact that I never did like the kokuhaku, right? Like the formal, semi-formal kind of like declaration of love, right? Where I was like, right, I'm gonna write this in the comments. I apparently cannot do more than one thing at a time. Kokuhaku, where like, I give like this preamble about like our time together and why I like them, and if you would like to, please be my girlfriend, right? Where in the States, I'm just used to like, there's sort of like, at least in my experience, it was always like, okay, we're dating for a little while, and if we're spending every day together, then it's just sort of like, there's this natural like progression where it's like, okay, clearly we're a couple. I've never really had it be like a situation where it's vague, where I've needed to say to somebody, okay, well, let's be exclusive. It just seemed to be the assumed situation. But here, despite the fact that everything leading up to that kokuhaku, that declaration of your intention, like you're like basically, let's go out, right? Do you want to be my girlfriend, right? Which seems very like schoolish to me. Despite the fact that everything up until that point can be mind-bendingly vague. You really have to lay it out very clearly, sort of at that end point, if you really want to kick things off. But again, I never did that in my relationship. I think, if I remember correctly, it's now almost 3 years ago, but my partner said to me at one point, so are we dating? And I said, I thought so. So I sort of broke the rules quite a bit as far as that goes. But yeah. Well, another relationship I had, I sort of did it properly, and for whatever reason, this one, I just never did it. Let's look at the comments here. My friend Junko said that she wanted to date foreign men because they maybe aren't going the Japanese men and they didn't have traditional values like them, such as a woman should be an obedient housewife. Her dad often told her mom to shut the door, bring him a drink, etc., and she didn't want a relationship like that. She has since changed her mind and dates an older Japanese man. She also dated her 26-year-old English teacher when she was 16. Ooh, so who knows? First of all, the English teacher's a fucking creep. You know, that kind of thing happens a lot, and it's like, I want those people to jump in front of a train, basically. It's a terrible thing to say, but anyway. Yeah, I think this is something that I hear a lot too, to speak to Wikipedia's point, like where, where like there's this idea that maybe Western men do not have, or not Western men necessarily, but non-Japanese men do not have these sort of, this outdated expectation, like gender norms, right? Gender roles, that kind of thing. Which of course many men still do, even me, as much as I try not to. I'm sure that I exhibit this, right, in some way. And like, yeah, so that is, I would call that a misconception, to some degree. And to speak to the second point, where like this person Wikipedia is talking about said that her dad often told her mom to shut the door, bring him a drink, etc. And that's something that I have observed more with older couples, but certainly with like some couples in their 30s and that kind of thing, where like the guy will literally be sitting there and not saying a word. He's just looking at like the newspaper, he's watching TV, and he won't make any effort to be polite to the request he's about to make. He'll just say, "Music, water." Bring me water is the implication, right? Music, that kind of thing. And you're just like, okay, like, bitch, no, get up and get the damn water yourself, or at least tack a please onto the end of that request, right? And another thing that I see often is like, when you go to like, I don't know if it's the same for every supermarket, but a lot of supermarkets, when you check it out, there'll be like there's like the supermarket itself, and then outside there's usually like some benches and stuff like that, and a lot of times there'll be like a TV showing like NHK or like Radio Taiso, where people are doing exercise on the TV, and usually you'll see like a bunch of men just sitting there. And sometimes what you'll see is like the wives will come back and the men will be like, what took you so long? I was waiting forever. And it's like, why don't you get off your ass and actually help her do the shopping, or do the shopping yourself, and then you don't have to wait at all, right? You're part of the process. And so, that sort of speaks to this point about these sort of outdated gender ideas from our context. She was so in love with him after he broke up with her, and she came to Canada for a year. Looking back now on as a teacher, it was so sad. Yeah, like I said, it's something you hear about often. You hear like these guys like, this goes back to the point Travis made earlier, where these guys come here and suddenly women are giving them attention, even if they're 16 or 18 years old. And the guys get a big head and they think, okay, well, I'm gonna go for it. And then you see them get arrested and that kind of thing, which is even besides the point, right? It's just like, I hate that shit. I hate it. Salty P says, you do have some people that don't pick up hints when it comes to the opposite sex, and sometimes this causes them to come across as not being socially inept. Yeah, I think, I want to clarify your point here. I think you're saying that when people are unable to pick up those hints, it makes them look like they're socially inept. I think is what you're getting at, Salty P. And yeah, for sure. Like, of course, there have been times, many times, even in this relationship I'm in now, where I have just like and part of that's cultural in this relationship, but maybe a better thing to talk about would be like in the States where I've been trying to date somebody, and like the negative clues were always really easy to pick up on, right? And maybe as a side effect of the type of women that I normally date, or maybe just because I'm an idiot, the social clue is pointing out that there was some interest there were not always clear to me, and so sometimes that was, of course, that makes things a little bit difficult for sure. Kitty Neko Cat. Oh, 3 different ways to say cat in that name. Hello, Kitty Neko Cat. I think we've spoken before in the comments. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. I think we still ask each other out to an extent in the UK. Sure. When you say to an extent, like, what does that mean? Are you like, do you just say, okay, let's be exclusive, or are we boyfriend and girlfriend, or do you say, okay, like, hey, let's go out, let's be boyfriend and girlfriend? Like, what do you do? Yeah, my father-in-law says meshi, right? It's exactly the same kind of thing as mizut, right? Now, there's another opportunity here. So gohan is how you usually say meal in Japanese, right? Hiru gohan, yoru gohan, that kind of thing. Meshi is typically like a much more male way to say it. So for example, when I'm talking to my girlfriend, my partner, I will say hiru meshi nani kuu ka, right? Like, and that's another thing, that verb ku, which equals taberu, right? Ku and taberu is like typically more of like a male way to speak. So meshi, like in this case the father-in-law just saying like, meshi is like this super like dude way of like just like demanding dinner, right? Probably not too uncommon. Stuff like that still happens here in the US, but it's mostly older people. Yeah. I think, at least based on my observations, right, completely anecdotal at best, data is that these sort of things are dying out a little bit more with younger men, but then apparently the problem is now with younger men is that everybody is like what do you call it? What we call like a beta male in the States. That kind of thing. Beta male in the States, and so the word for that in Japanese is nanyattake? Soushoku danshi. Soushoku danshi, which means soushoku danshi. Ara? Soushoku. Nanja? Soushoku danshi. Soushoku danshi. Which means literally, so I'm trying to write this in the comments, soushoku danshi, which means like literally a grass-eating male, or sometimes you'll see it translated as like a vegetarian male. So a lot of women now have a complaint that men are not aggressive enough, and don't understand how to court women and that kind of thing, which is probably a topic for a whole nother video. But another random story. I stayed with her on my first trip to Japan, my friend in this case, and we were both 20. I asked her if Japanese don't like PDA because I noticed that no one was holding hands on the street. She told me no, but then we got on the train in Tokyo and this teenage couple were making out hard against the door with legs entangled, everything. We were like, what the fuck? Yeah, that's unusual to say the least, right? Whereas like States, like in the high school, that's just like a normal occurrence, right? Like, not saying I was guilty of that myself, but it's something one might do if they're in high school and that kind of thing. From Kitty Neko Cat, yeah, often there's some kind of discussion about being exclusive, sometimes just shall we be basic exclusive, a little bit. Yeah, definitely nothing like the formality of kokohaku in Japan. Yeah. So I guess that's not so different, right? A Facebook exclusive, right? Yeah, that's a phrase I haven't heard in a while. For obvious reasons, but yeah. By the way, if anyone is interested, I talked about soushoku danshi. The opposite of that is, of course, would be like a meat eater. These are men who are sort of normally aggressive or more masculine, I guess, in their approach. So you'll hear something like nikushoku danshi, which means literally meat-eating man. So let's write this in the comments. So shoku danshi and nikushoku danshi. And sometimes what you'll hear too, instead of this, is at sou shoku kei and niku shoku kei. Right, sou shoku kei and niku shoku kei. And you'll use these like to describe somebody else, so you'll be like, oh, that guy's a meat-eating type, right? That's what kei means. When you see kei attached as a prefix to something, it means something type. So for example, you'll be like, this food is like sticky type. So you'll say like, これはなんか何やったっけ? Nebe-neba-ke, which means like sticky type, that kind of thing. Kitty Neko Cat says, I prefer assertive to aggressive. I cringe so much when Japanese people say attack. Yeah. That's a really good point, Kitty. That's probably a much better thing to say, assertive versus aggressive. Right, men showing that they're interested and trying to date, asking you out, that kind of thing, as opposed to sitting back and waiting for things to happen to them. There's also, there's a third vocabulary, which is basically like, kabetsuroru, I think is what it is, where there's like, basically there's this dish where you put like cabbage and meat together into like a hot pot, and then you boil it. You don't boil it, you simmer it together until it makes everything cooked, because that's how cooking works. And so if you're sort of a mix of the two, they call you like kabetsuroru, that kind of thing. Which I think is probably the most natural place to be. Like if you're too much like meat-eating male, then probably that's when you're gonna get arrested. And then if you're too much of a vegetarian male, probably that's when you're not gonna have much luck, right? Lila Zyke? I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you for joining the stream. Cabbage roll. Cabbage roll, that's right. I've asked Japanese people about whether they date multiple people at the same time, or if they stick to going out with one love interest at the same time. Most of them say they go out with one love interest rather than dating around. So people like try to focus on and see if one relationship is going to work before they go. How can I say? People aren't playing the field at the same time, trying to choose between different options, I guess. Yeah, cabbage roll. Whenever I heard that, I always thought of there's this character in Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think he actually has a character name, because I think he later appeared in Legend of Korra, where like, I forget the character, but basically lands on his like his cart full of cabbages, and he gets really upset and he screams, "My cabbages!" and that kind of thing. And every time I heard cabbage roll, that guy always pops into my head. And basically whenever I see a roll of cabbage, that pops into my head. But anyway, Kyushu Trail, thank you so much for stopping by, and thank you for subbing to the channel. And yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out your videos, man. Take care. Okay, so Leela's saying that, yeah, there's the kind of thing of like, you know, not playing the field, trying to focus on one person, seeing if you have a connection, that kind of thing. So yeah. All right, well, anyway, I think we're at like the later end of the stream, the latter end of the stream. So I guess I want to open it up for questions. Questions about the topic we were trying to focus on today, as much as I can focus on any topic, are great. But really anything is fine. Anything you would like to know about Japan, about anything like that, please feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer your questions. Get some questions, filling the blank space with an awkward chanty song. Have you tried the dating apps in Japan, Pairs, Omiai? I have tried Tinder here, and I tried, what is it? Hello Cupid, is that not? Okay Cupid, I think is what it's called, right? So I tried Tinder and I tried OkCupid. OkCupid was like pointless to me. And to some extent, so was Tinder, because it was just like, probably as a function of where I live, like most of the people that were on there were much older than I was, and I'm not really interested in dating like super much older men. Much older men, much older women. Uh, um, so that was a thing. But also, I had a couple dates through Tinder, but a lot of times it turned out being like this free language teaching thing and that kind of thing. But also just the way in which Tinder is used here is like, yes, Charlie's into younger men, clearly. The way in which Tinder is used here, it's like, either what happens is what happens a lot of times is people will use Tinder, but they'll write in their account that I'm just looking for a friend, like I'm married, that kind of thing. And so either they, in fact, are actually looking for a friend, or just ask Pickles the Gaijin, who is a fucking homewrecker apparently. I love you, Pickles, but we're just talking about things that you've put out there publicly. Or they're like trying to look for like, some side piece while trying to look as though they're not. That's the thing that happens. Or people will like their Facebook or their profile picture will just be like a stuffed animal, which gives you no indication, right? Like of what the person looks like, and then like it'll be like a stuffed animal and there won't be really anything written in the profile section, so you have no idea who you're potentially connecting with. So all of this to say in a very long-winded way that I think dating apps are a joke, and you should avoid them here. I literally only just joined the chat, so I don't know what's discussed. Basically just about dating culture, Kitty. So are you still friends with Jake? Yeah, yeah, Jake and I are still friends. We don't really talk as much as we used to. But yeah, we're still friendly. Yeah, how did you meet your partner? I can't remember if you have mentioned it. I have mentioned it, but to condense the story, because I like telling the story so much, and I will talk about it until the world explodes. Basically, a good friend of mine who passed away was her uncle. I met her at the funeral, but we didn't really talk because it's a funeral, and probably you shouldn't try to pick up women at funerals, but we ended up meeting just sort of by chance later on, and and she's like, oh, hey, I think I knew you. Didn't you come to my uncle's funeral? And then we started talking, and then that was it. That's the abridged version. What books are you reading now? Yeah, the classic Japan Tinder picture is the back of their head. It's true. Or like a silhouette or something like that with very little information about their hobbies. Or the hobby will be like, I like drinking, which is something you see too commonly, which I don't know why drinking is a hobby. What books are you reading now? It doesn't really count as a book. Well, it does count as a book, but not in like the novel sense. I just finished reading Kimetsu no Yaiba up to volume 20, and now I'm rereading Koe no Katachi, Shape of Your Voice. And as for more like traditional print kind of thing, oh god, what is the book I'm reading? I'm reading like the first in the Witcher series. I'm reading, oh god, what is it even called? Connections, or Attached, I think is what it's called, and it's about like different personality types when in relationships. And god, what is the last one? I'm rereading a book that actually Travis recommended to me about the possibility that kind of our understanding of what the oldest civilizations in the world are might be wrong, and there might be actually like an older civilization that predates like Mayan culture and that kind of thing, maybe predates like Chinese culture and that kind of thing. And I wish I could remember the name of the book off the top of my head because it's really, really fascinating. And that's why I'm reading it again. Kitty asked, did you discuss Terrace House? Because I really enjoy watching it for just the general friendships and cute dating, but sometimes like now with Boss, it's so hard to watch. Yeah, that was like the focus. That was the focus of maybe like the first 15 minutes or so of the stream was basically like me explaining what a creep I think the guy is, and but of course how he's also much more acceptable in Japanese culture, that way of doing things, than in like, for example, the culture in the States. You're better off using Meetups rather than dating apps. It's my experience from my short time in Japan. Yeah, yeah, I think Meetups, like for example, I haven't gone to anything like Gokon or like a thing that was labeled as like a dating meetup, but I don't. I'm sure it's the same for many places, but in Sabai City, there's like an international center where they offer like beginner Japanese lessons at like super like 2,000 yen for an hour kind of thing. Yeah, is that right? But anyway, they're really cheap. Maybe it's like 500 yen per hour, I think. And they have like a lot of international events, so it's a long time to it's a good place and a good time to make friends and that kind of thing. So it's always much better, I think, even in the States, to try and meet people in person from the get-go. That's just my opinion, because I'm an old man, probably. Yeah, the name of that book I was talking about is Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock. Travis, thank you for the information. It is grand. It is grand. Do you still write stuff? I do still write stuff. Yes, I do. I'm in like a weird place with exactly what I'm gonna do with writing, because I've been so focused on YouTube for the last couple of months, and that's what I wanted to talk about today, but I guess I'll just talk about it a little bit. But we're gonna be starting a podcast that's hopefully gonna get started around July or August. And that's something I'm focusing on now, and I have a couple different themes I'm toying around with, whether it's like talking about like your own creativity, or talking about like for example, the podcast will have like a quote that sets like the theme of the podcast, and then we talk about whatever comes from that quote. Or also it talks about like maybe not, how can I say, like you talk about like a problem you have and how you fix it, like maybe like a fault that you have and how you fix it, that kind of thing. So there's some ideas that I'm toying around with, and Emily, you're going to be one of the people that I contact, because I'd really like to have you as a guest on that show, whatever form it ends up being in. But as for writing, like most of it is geared towards like most of the writing I'm doing now is for What the Fukui, which is going to be being made once everything is absolutely back to normal and it's safe to travel and all that kind of thing. And I'm still working on a draft of a fiction novel that I finished writing all the way back in November. But I'm still in this place where I just feel like I want to burn everything I write. So I don't know if it's in the cards for me to be like a published writer. That's the thing. I'm in this really sad place where maybe I'm realizing that that's the truth. Or maybe it's just a phase, because I'm having so much fun on YouTube and creating like digital audio and video content. I completely agree. I like recommending Terrace House to my friends in the UK as a way to, I don't know, see what Japanese people are not weird and crazy. Like, yeah. Right, that's the thing, is like you see when watching Terrace House how completely exactly the same people here are. It's the people everywhere else in the world, right? And it's a thing that you wouldn't think people have to learn, but they do. But they do, right? People still think because of this sort of cool Japan initiative that exports crazy Japan as a way to bring people here. Like people have this image that Japanese people are just nuts, and it's just not the case, of course. So Leela asks, how is your Japanese proficiency? What level are you? How long did it take you to get there? On paper, I am N2 level. That's what the certificate says. Probably, if I assess myself realistically now, I'm somewhere between N2 and N1 as far as conversational ability is not the right way to put it, because N1, even if you have your N1, it doesn't mean you can speak Japanese very well. Probably it does mean that, but it's not a guarantee. But technically, I'm somewhere between N2 and N1. I probably couldn't pass the N1 if I took it now, realistically. As far as my speaking ability goes, I would call myself fluent but not native. There's still like a lot of gaps in my vocabulary or that kind of thing, but I don't have any trouble in almost any situation now. So Oh my God, I'm so excited for this podcast. Yes, be excited. I'm excited to make it. It's something I've always wanted to do because I've always been really interested in things like NPR. Like, of course, NPR is like a very blanket thing to say. Like, there was a show when I was still living in the States that was This American Life. Of course, it's still happening. But I really always enjoyed This American Life and telling a story through radio and like, building it in a way that it's kind of like an oral experience. And I mean oral, AURAL, because I know Travis is a pervert and is thinking bad things. Probably not true, but like building sound into it and all that kind of thing and using it to tell story and that kind of thing. So I'm really excited to do something even related to that tangentially through making a podcast. What's the situation in Fukui now in terms of corona? I live in Hyogo and it looks like I might be going back to work soon. I'm kind of scared. How do you feel about the state of things? Fukui Prefecture has not had any new cases now for almost a month. Any confirmed cases, I should say. So I have been back to work full time since last Tuesday. And things here are getting back to normal. A lot of businesses are not seeing customers come in, probably because a lot of people have lost their livelihood, or at least a good chunk of their livelihood. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode of One Cuppa. But things are starting to go back to normal for sure. As for how I feel about the state of things, I'm wary about how quickly people are reverting back to their old their old habits. I think it's too quick to take off your mask. I think it's too soon to take off your mask, I should say. I think, just immediately acting like none of this ever happened. I think it's foolhardy, to say the least. So I hope, because most likely, if we can believe what the experts are saying, there is going to be a second wave of this. And if people have just, let's write this in the comments. Ki o nuku. Right, this is read as ki o nuku, which means to sort of like let your finger off the gas. Let your finger off the gas. Let your foot off the gas. Right? Let your finger off the trigger for too soon. Then when that second wave comes, if and when it does come, then we're going to be in some considerable trouble again. And I saw some news article this morning that was stating how like the death toll in Tokyo in March was like 10 times higher than was originally reported, right? And that to me just points to this idea that we need to take whatever is being said about the condition of the country with a big heaping spoonful of salt, I think. So be hopeful, but be careful, I think is my feeling about the state of things. So guys, I think that's a pretty good place to end it, though I think maybe that's a little bit kind of a dark place to be like, yeah, we're all fucked if that second wave comes. So, but I need things to clear up so I can move to Japan. A lot of places have frozen hiring. Yeah. I have a student who had gotten everything cleared to move over here. Someone that I teach online, and they were like, we're sorry, but now you need to just wait for a couple months until you can come over. And so she's just sort of stuck in place kind of thing. So hopefully that doesn't happen to you for too much longer, Andrew. And hopefully, there are a lot of people who have their lives here already who can't re-enter the country. So that's a thing too. So, but guys, that's, like I said, that's where we're going to end the stream for today. I really, really, really am happy that so many of you joined and that we were able to have this kind of conversation. I think there's a little bit of a danger when doing these just to treat it like a normal episode of One Cuppa where there's nobody talking back to me. So I apologize that I did that for the first chunk of the stream, but I'm glad we could have more of a back and forth towards the latter half. Bit of like self-plugging thing I want to do here at the end. If you're interested in learning some Japanese that you may not find in a textbook, or you're interested in learning how to use Japanese you will find in a textbook more naturally, please check out Terrace Nihongo. If you're interested in getting some exclusive content or getting Terrace Nihongo a week early, please check out my Patreon. And yeah, that's all for self-plugging thing. I love all of your faces. Thank you so much for joining, and I hope to see you all next time around. So, what level is that for? Are you talking about the Japanese? It's not really geared towards a level so much. It's just because it's mostly focused on like teaching vocabulary and how to use vocabulary. So I think it's useful for any level. So on that note, thank you guys as always. Thank you as always so much for watching. I love your faces, and I'll see you all very soon indeed. Cheers. If I hit the button, will